The people in Rexburg were stunned that this happened there.
We just want to make sure things okay.
2 dead women living in a home with a man who was alive.
Body.
How does this happen?
Tell me how I died.
It's a little crazy to be pulling back into the driveway. I haven't been in the driveway for 19 years.
The beginning of the week, June 19th, 2004, that week, the sheriff's office had received a complaint from the Sakota family. They were super concerned for David Kaneko's wife and daughter, Lorraine and Laura. The family said they haven't seen anybody coming and going from the trailer for a very long time. And they said Dave Kaneko hadn't been seen at the house, that he'd been staying in Idaho Falls, they believed, at a hotel. That kind of gave us a little bit even greater concern, because if nobody's coming and going, how are you getting food in the house? So we wanted to go out and do the welfare check.
I'm Lorraine's younger brother and Laura's uncle. I was working for the FBI, and I would always come home and visit the family. When Lorraine and Dave and Laura went in kind of seclusion, I couldn't understand why. I came up to visit with Mom, and she was saying in the sheriff's department, they're going to have a welfare check at the Kaneko home. So I told the sheriff, do me a favor, bring Lorraine and Laura out of the home to interview them to see if they're all right.
The Sakotas were very kind people. Everybody knows them in Rexburg. I would run into them and they would say, oh, we love your stories. So I developed more of a professional friendship with them as the years were going on. And this wasn't the first welfare check. So people were aware that something was going on. I just don't know if they knew the extent of what was happening. The sheriff's office, they contact David Kaneko, who's staying in Idaho Falls, about 30 minutes away in a motel. They tell him they have a search warrant and they're going to go inside the house. And David says, well, they're not going to come to the door for you. Wait until I get there. Well, the sheriff's office did not wait until David got there.
So everything's closed off, black visqueen basically in the windows. We have no eyes on in the house, and the front door was locked.
We did have a search warrant to ensure their mental health as well as their physical well-being. As I entered over the threshold of the house, I remember very distinctly the odor, strong ammonia smell. I could distinctly see a bed against the window, and I could tell that there was a person, readily recognizable that we had a deceased person.
And we pulled back the rest of the blankets on the bed and found the second body. Instantly, I'm thinking, this didn't happen overnight. This wasn't a couple weeks. This was a long time that they had been there. We've got to get these bodies out. We've got to get them to autopsy. The pathologist, he unzipped the bag and immediately said, I have no expertise in this area. At that point, I'm thinking, this isn't good. I have a big problem.
The sheriff said that the coroner can't do the autopsy. I retired from the FBI, so that's when I called the head of the FBI laboratory. And I told him, we need to find somebody that can do an autopsy that's really complicated. He says the best one in the entire world is Dr. Bill Rodriguez.
The sheriff said, we've got this strange case. We've never had anything like this before. I said, I need to actually be there and see in person.
In describing our family, we were very close. The area was 96% LDS. Lorraine got married around her senior year in college to David Kaneko. Dave was Japanese, just like we are. He was kind of quiet. They got married in the Idaho Falls temple. Shortly thereafter, Dave Kaneko moved his trailer on some land that's been in the family probably almost 100 years. Then Laura was born at the end of 1 year after their marriage. Laura was valedictorian at Ricks College, but Lorraine and Dave refused to let her walk in graduation.
The isolation was gradual, but it became sudden and abrupt. Right after my mother mentioned it to Laura to go on a mission.
2 days later, Dave and Lorraine came over to see my mom. and they looked upset. And Dave says, Laura's not going to go on a mission. We came over here to tell you to mind your own damn business. In 1997, my mom contacted the sheriff. The sheriff came out and did the first welfare check.
When Lorraine and Laura came to the door finally, they seemed agitated.
We felt helpless, and we thought, what started this? What's the problem?
Just the act of alienating yourself from everyone was contrary to not only the LDS church, but the culture of the area. That's just not how this community operates.
When Dave Kaneko arrived on scene, he seemed agitated that we were there. What was odd to me was he wasn't upset that we informed him that we had found bodies. His reaction was more of, what are you doing here? And that's when I said, hey, I need to talk to you. And he said, I would rather have an attorney. In Idaho, you can get a warrant for a material witness and hold them. So he was taken over to the Madison County Jail. Dr. Rodriguez was concerned because we didn't have a manner or mode of death. And so we were going to have to go through everything in the house to see if there was something that correlated. We started to find writings, like journal entries and writings, and they weren't just in one spot. They were all over the house.
When I was examining Laura's body, she was in a skeletal state with very little mummified tissue. Based in the environment there in the trailer, I was able to tell that Laura had died during the summer of approximately 2001.
Dave Kaneko put a notification in the jail that he wanted to talk to us. And when I get in there, he's not interested in having a conversation with us. He's worried about what we're doing with his property.
He posted bond quickly thereafter and was able to leave. But he couldn't stay at the trailer because deputies are searching his house. So he started staying in a motel.
A psychiatrist at the University of Utah have done an analysis of the writings and trying to understand diagnostically what was going on with both Laura and Lorraine in this process. She felt that Laura showed pretty clear signs earlier on of developing a depression with what we call some psychotic features. Laura believed that she was destined to marry a young man that was going to become an apostle and that they would arise and she would become his wife. Laura's mother became obsessively focused on making sure that Laura would have this future. And when he returned from his mission, in fact, did marry, but it wasn't Laura. So you think, well, this has got to derail this grand vision that they have about what's going to happen. But instead, it's like Laura and Lorraine doubled down.
It was apparent that David wasn't as deep into this delusion and had the ability to stop it and didn't.
In reaching my conclusions, there was no way I could determine that this wasn't a homicide directly. Looking at the crime scene photos, in the case of Laura, she has several rolls of towels up under her head. There was actually a vomitus pan down below her bed. And she's in somewhat of a fetal position, one that you would expect for someone who was sick. So in looking at everything in total, I came to the conclusion that most likely she had been ill. In the case of Lorraine, looking at her remains, she was very thin and emaciated just by looking, even though the soft tissues had shrunk somewhat. There was evidence that basically she must have denied herself food and water and then died as a result of that.
David told me by the 90s, Lorraine and especially Laura became increasingly reclusive. David is forbidden from having contact or seeing Laura. For a month or two after that 2001 welfare check, there was this horrible smell coming out of the bedroom.
Dave said he finds Laura deceased and Lorraine is livid.
After that, Lorraine died. At Lorraine's request, he put her on the bed with the daughter.
David Kaneko entered into a plea agreement with prosecutors. and pleaded guilty to the 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter and ultimately ended up spending 6 months in jail for those charges.